What's the haps? I'm Markus, and today I want to give you my professional gaming opinion on NFTs in gaming. I didn't want to do this, I hope they'd go away on their own, but now some of the big companies are trying to get on it, and so I have to talk about them. Okay, right, let's start at the top for those who aren't as incorrigibly online as I am. WTF is an NFT? First up, do you know anything about cryptocurrency? If the answer is no, you should probably stop watching, go back to your blissful ignorance. It's better that way. Your life will not be meaningfully improved by learning this stuff. An interjection before I do begin. Smack bang in the middle of my writing the script for this video, Dan Olsen of YouTube channel Folding Ideas released a 2.5-hour deep dive into everything blockchain, far better researched and presented than anything I could muster. I probably learned a lot more from it than I would have ever had the energy to research on my own, so I will be leaning on his work a bit, but I still have some thoughts on the nitty-gritty as it regards gaming, so I'm going to forge onwards and hopefully keep it under 2.5 hours. It took me 3 months to make my last 40-minute video, so something that big would actually kill me. But I heartily recommend his video if you want to learn all the ways this technology is ruining everything. So yeah, cryptocurrency. A technology poorly understood and explained by even some of its most fervent advocates. As best I understand it, which is admittedly not incredibly well, but also it's not super important, a decentralized network validates a list, or chain, of records split into blocks of data. A blockchain. Usually this uses a bunch of computational energy to do, and so users are rewarded for doing this validation with magic internet money. Cryptocurrency. Stuff like Bitcoin, that's the big one you'll definitely have heard of. That money can then be traded within the system, with the blockchain serving to validate the transaction records. The effective touted benefits of this are that no one entity controls the system, unlike a bank, and the records are incredibly secure as you'd need to control more than 50% of the network to be able to change things yourself. The biggest downside of this is that as the list gets longer, more computational work is needed to earn the rewards. You know, money. This has a fairly significant consequence due to the fact that computers crunching numbers constantly isn't free. It has a huge energy cost associated with it, which is why you see headlines comparing Bitcoin's energy consumption to that of the entire nation of Argentina. And since we haven't yet figured out the whole climate breakdown issue yet and transition to sustainable energy sources, that seems a tiny bit reckless. Add to that many of the resources being thrown at these projects are in less developed nations who are even more reliant on fossil fuels, and it's even worse. I want to state here that I don't think blockchain stuff is inherently bad. There's no shortage of opinion that it's all bad and we should shut it all down. I'm not a Luddite or a technophobe, I'm open to being convinced, I just don't think anyone has found a use for it yet that isn't bad. It can be used for things other than cryptocurrency, but that's mainly what it is used for, so that's all a lot of people think it is. A crypto thing. A wildly speculative get-rich-quick scheme for disillusioned fools and a plaything for the vastly wealthy. Even the most ardent proponents of a decentralized currency still mainly seem to hope that it catches on predominantly so that their investment will go up in value. And it can be done without burning down the planet, it just simply often isn't though, and that doesn't divorce it from the other multitude of issues with it which are not the focus of our attention today because otherwise I'd never get anywhere. So before we get into the meat and potatoes of it, I'll set out my stance as being that I see blockchain as a solution in search of a problem, and we've yet to find a problem that it's a good fit for. That's my Cliff's Notes on crypto. So what's an NFT? A non-fungible token, to give it its full title. Others have backronymed the letters into far less flattering epithets, but I'm obviously here to dunk on it with reason, not memes. Okay, maybe some memes. Anyway, NFTs. You have your regular fungible tokens, right? Things which are freely interchangeable. Your dollars, your Great British Pound Sterling, your Bitcoin. You have one of those, and it's the same as any other one of those. Fungible. Some blockchains allow you to spend some amount of their fungible tokens, their cryptocurrency, to mint an NFT on their chain. Now you have a thing which is unique. You cannot funge it. There's a record of what it is, and who owns it indelibly recorded on this decentralized transaction log. And by extension, you can give it, or sell it to someone else, with an equally permanent record of the exchange. So you can definitively say who owns it. That's the core, practical, technical side of it. What do we do with this new ability to say who owns stuff? If you've come across NFTs so far, it's probably in the context of art. That is, for a given definition of art, anyway. The idea is to try and create a digital equivalent of the fine art market. Say you want to buy a Picasso or whatever. You rock up to the Louvre, declare,
One art, please.
And they hand you a Mona Lisa. I guess I'm not an art person. It's like that, but for an ape smoking a blunt. So yeah, I said they were trying to make a fine art market. It has some limitations. One, it's just a record of who owns it, like a receipt. The thing itself is still hosted on a server on the internet somewhere centralized, which can stop hosting it, and then the thing is gone. Two, this only matters if everyone recognizes and respects the receipt. If I don't, and I just like the art... What rather separates a Picasso from an ape is that a print of a Picasso is just that, a copy. If I save a version of your ape, they're digital files, so they're totally identical. 3. Digital art is comparatively trivial to mass produce, hence apes. They're effectively no different from a pickeroo, a small handful of interchangeable elements that can be combined, however, and thrown into a randomizer to make thousands of unique variants very quickly. I don't even know why they have to be so ugly. Maybe I'm missing something, because a lot of talented artists make very good pickeroos, yet somehow apes are the thing we have.
I hate every ape I see, from chimpanzee to chimpanzee.
Picasso was one of the finest artists of his generation, and we recognise that talent by giving his work value. We value apes because we say so, I suppose? They're technically unique, but scarcity is not the only reason we value fine art, and forcing artificial scarcity on something which isn't fine art doesn't make it into fine art. The vast majority of these NFTs require negligible skill to make and have little aesthetic appeal, so at the end of the day it's creating value out of nothing in the hope that you can find someone willing to pay even more for that nothing. And finally, 4. Art theft is rife in the NFT world. Before apes, this stuff did begin with actual talented digital artists making actual non-algorithmically generated art into NFTs, doing the fine art thing, which is shrug, fine, I guess. But on an anonymized, decentralized, largely unregulated platform, there's nothing to stop anyone putting any image on the blockchain and selling it themselves. And they do. Constantly. DeviantArt even had to develop a system to detect these infringements so the artists could send takedown requests. They found 90,000 infringements in 3 months. That's an average of 1,000 works stolen to be sold for profit every day from one website. The surprisingly centralized sounding platform managing all of this, OpenSea, has at this point, I gather, just begun ignoring takedown requests. The actual art side of this is basically just a black market of stolen goods now, really. And the algorithmic ones, the collections, aren't much better. Scams where someone pitches an interesting sounding project, sells a bunch of NFTs and then vanishes with the money days if not hours later are so hilariously common that they've earned themselves the nickname rug pulls, a fun word you can abbreviate to simply rug, or use as a verb, rugging. That's how ubiquitous this is. You'd think after a couple of these people might be more cautious, but nope, here we are.
Fool me 7 times, shame on you. Fool me 8 or more times, shame on me.
Something else I've never heard addressed by anyone on either side of the debate is, what's to stop you minting the same thing on multiple blockchains? I might be wrong, but it kinda seems to me like nothing? So, can you sell the same thing twice? If so, cool, add that to the pile of scams and grifts that blockchain has enabled. Let's get to the point. Where does gaming come in? Well, there's nothing to say an NFT has to be an image. That was simply the first, most obvious, easiest thing to do with them. An NFT is just some data, and that data can be a lot more than just pictures. If we were to make video game assets into NFTs, be that characters, weapons, hats, whatever, then you get to say that the player actually owns those things. I think the first argument I ever heard for NFTs in gaming suggested that games would be better if you could personally own your character. What if, when you play Mario Kart, you could be the only person in the world who gets to be Mario? Well, that's patently stupid, because the only reason Mario is famous in the first place is because everyone can be Mario. If every single video game character in the world were limited to only one owner, we wouldn't know any of them, and we wouldn't have fans or franchises. The only reason Mario has value is because he's been made famous over 40 years. To move to NFTs is to kill off the idea of ever having iconic characters, which isn't great from a marketing perspective and just kind of boring from a player perspective. Plus you'd also run out of characters really fast, so we're back to doing pickaroos again. You can't own Mario, but what about Mario wearing a silly hat while sticking his tongue out and smoking a joint? It makes a tiny bit more sense in the case of things like MMOs. Everyone's character is effectively unique there. You won't have created them at random, but you'll have picked out a bunch of different visual traits, and even if you look the same as someone else, you have different names. It's your character, right? But is it really yours? Do you own it? If you play World of Warcraft, say, and you have the Sword of 1,000 Truths because you're not a noob, do you actually have any meaningful ownership of that item? Well, no, because Blizzard can take it away from you if they so feel like. What happens when WoW shuts down one day in the distant future? Do you get to keep your character? Or your sword? No. Unless it's on the blockchain, then no one can take it from you without the password to your crypto wallet. And because the record is permanent, it'll persist beyond the life of the game. This is the argument underpinning a bunch of the gaming NFT stuff. Your stuff in the game has value, and it should be yours to keep. After all, you earned it. It's a shame it's not that simple. For starters, does your Sword of 1,000 Truths have any value if the game's dead? Probably not, you might struggle to find a buyer. What if you buy the sword and Blizz decide it's too OP and nerf it? What if they decide to up the drop rate so more players can have one? To that end, how, in fact, can you have the only one of any given sword in the game? Well, the Sword of 1,000 Truths might just be a type of sword, and the stats might be randomized, or you might get unique skins. That doesn't solve those first two problems, though. If you bought the sword as an investment because you thought it would be highly sought after, and Blizzard's actions in trying to create a fun and balanced game then devalue your investment, are you entitled to any sort of compensation or redress for that? Everything has to be perfectly balanced right from the word go, and never altered, or it can't work. Even if the blockchain says a thing is yours, would you ever invest in it knowing its value could tank just because a dev tried to make their game more fun? At the end of the day, pretty much everyone pushing this stuff still sees it as an investment. Maybe they're not open with you, or even themselves, about it, and the level of obfuscation makes it easy to avoid the matter. But the vibe all NFT communities are trying to instill is, we're all going to get rich, and frankly, a video game sword is a shitty investment. What if you could do more with your Sword of 1,000 Truths outside of WoW? An oft-suggested idea for NFT implementation is that your items or skins could be brought into other games, or if getting real pie in the sky about it, any game. What if Mario had the Sword of 1,000 Truths? Or, Doom Marine? Tom Nook? Okay, I'm taking that to ridiculous extremes to illustrate a point, but yeah, you have to think about this for less than half a second to realise this doesn't have a lot of legs. Cross-compatibility isn't without precedent. Valve's TF2 hats could be used in Portal 2. Little Big Planet's game items were all cross-compatible. Pokemon games have all been able to trade Pokemon and items among them forever. The key thing here is that in all of these instances, the tradable things could be moved between games by the same developer using compatible systems. So right off the bat, if you want your items supported in other games, the devs of the other games have to be pretty much developing theirs with your items in mind. At a minimum, that's art assets. How do the items look in both games? Unless they have exactly the same art direction, someone now also has to remake all of another game's assets to fit the new game, which is not going to be a small task. Heaven help us if they have any kind of stats on them, now that balance issue is multiplied. You can't tweak an item without it affecting several games simultaneously. Although I'm not entirely certain balance is a huge factor in NFT games, but we'll get to that. What else could go wrong? Well, let me tell you about smart contracts. You know how I said an NFT is just a bit of data? Well, that basically is your smart contract. It's the core essence of your NFT. That data might simply be a URL pointing you at a JPEG. Ta-da, that's your fine art. It's still a smart contract. No matter how grandiose that sounds for a URL, it's technically correct.
The best kind of correct.
Savvier artists, when extricating the funge from their work, might also include a little snippet of code that says whenever their artwork gets sold on, they take a 5% cut of the sale. Or the code might be something more. Could be its own self-contained app, it could be a computer virus, or it could be part of your video game. A bit of code in the NFT that talks to the game code to tell it how to handle stuff. World of Cryptocraft looks at your Sword of 1,000 Truths and reads the code. It knows that yours is pink and knobbly with a fire effect, it does 27 attack and 25 agility, and anyone you strike with it is given the noob debuff. Seems sensible? Until I tell you that you can't change a smart contract. Not easily anyway. I mean, that makes sense, right? The Sword of 1,000 Truths is yours. It's an NFT, it's your possession. Why would anyone, the game devs included, be able to mess with it? So you can't amend a smart contract. But you can replace it. You can lock the old one and mint a new one that has the changes implemented, of course paying the new minting fee. But that's fine, you shouldn't need to replace them, really. You would never have, I don't know, a bug in the code or anything, would you? My example is actually really bad for illustrating this, because there's not a lot there that couldn't be handled entirely server-side. You probably won't find a lot of bugs in color equals pink, attack equals 27, and the game just has to read those attributes. If it turns out that pink is OP, you can nerf that without touching the item. You'd still piss off every owner of a pink weapon, but you wouldn't have to re-mint anything. I think I'd struggle to come up with an example of how this functionality would actually cause problems, but I don't need to, because there's one pretty significant real-world example I can use. Wolfgame. Wolfgame was a little more ambitious in making their NFTs than simply a list of stats and attributes, and I guess props to them for that at least. Their NFTs were each self-contained apps which allowed players to use them to gamble crypto tokens and perform actions in-game. I suspect you see where this is going. They released the NFTs with buggy code which was subsequently duplicated over 13,000 times, and which needed to be replaced. All of which makes a bit of a mockery, yet again, of the idea that you own your own stuff. I presume in the most technical sense you could choose not to migrate and keep your old NFT, but then it's not supported by the game anymore, which was the thing that gave it any value in the first place. Okay, so if all the technical limitations and complications aren't enough to put you off already, let's talk play to earn. I feel like it's a grim, dystopian enough phrase as it is, but it's one of the big talking points of NFT gaming, so we have to do this. What if you could get paid for playing games all day? That's the pitch. That's every kid's dream, right? That's very obviously the appeal of Twitch streaming, games journalism, or pro esports, none of which are remotely as easy or often as glamorous as they sound, and the same is absolutely true of play to earn. Axie Infinity is the one game that's made a big go of this. At its core, it's pretty much Pokemon NFTs, except the Axies aren't even cool, interesting, and varied, they're blobs with randomly generated features and stats. You need 3 of them to make a starter team, you get a limited amount of energy per day to spend battling other teams, and you can win, and I shit thee not,
Smooth love potions.
Smooth Love Potions, or SLPs, are another kind of crypto token which can be held and sold, or they can be used to breed Axies, which also are NFTs with saleable value. And that's where you can cash out and earn for playing. Sounds like a good deal, right? Sign me up. So let's grab 3 Axies. Oh, they're kinda pricey. I'd heard a few people say the buy-in on the game is like $150 per Axie, which is actually pretty commonplace. I did find cheaper ones on OpenSea, but still like $80, plus transaction fees, and you need 3 of them to play, so you're looking at like $250 to $500 for 3 of the most garbage tier creatures that you're now going to try and use competitively. Better ones can cost thousands. Okay, maybe we're now thinking that's a little bit out of our budget for a video game, but we'd still kind of like to get in on playing to earn. Is there anyone out there who can help with that? I'm so glad you asked, there sure is. Meet your new boss. Groups like Yield Guild and the Whale Scholars will offer you a scholarship, which is to say they'll loan you some Axies to get started, and then take a cut of all the SLPs you earn until you've paid off your debt. Yeah baby, we're bringing back indentured servitude. And don't worry, they'll be cracking the whip to make sure you're hitting your daily quotas. Much like the gig economy jobs before it, there's a kind of outward appearance that this work, for an incredibly loose definition of the word work, is something for the working and lower middle classes to earn a little extra on top of their 9 to 5. But the reality is it's a shitty grind exploiting disadvantaged people who come to rely on it as their sole income. with none of the employment protections an actual job with an actual employer provides. Things like, say, child labour laws? Not that I'm standing for employers here, but it beats the hell out of being exploited by grifters. Much NFT shilling hay is made of the fact that people in the global south, because of course it is, are able to make a better living than they otherwise would playing Axie. Though those same voices fail to note that a combination of crypto volatility, combined with the stability of a video game economy, means that that's not always true. It's disadvantaged people in developing countries being exploited by wealthy foreign industrialists. It's a sweatshop, the same as it ever was. It's the purest embodiment of the NFT scam, in that it's people who aren't badly off, but who are in no sense the winners under capitalism, wanting another roll of the dice, hoping that if they get in early enough, they can have a chance, this time around, to be the Jeff Bezos of the NFT world order. It's also why NFT guys go in so obnoxiously hard on it. It's not really that they believe it's the future and are doing you a favour by convincing you to join them. It's that they have a usually not insignificant financial investment in the crypto space, which they need to go up in value so that they can be a winner this time. Systems like Axie even more so, because if people keep grinding out SLPs all day every day and keep breeding more Axies, then unless people keep buying them, there'll be an excess of supply compared to demand, and the value of that supply will drop. The supply that people invested in the hopes that they get rich off of it. It is, by its very design, a system that constantly requires new people to buy in order to sustain it. I wonder if there's a name for a scheme like that. I guess it would form a sort of triangular structure. It's also worth touching on the fact that by introducing a financial element, or even a wage relationship into the game, you're fundamentally changing the nature of it and how people engage with it. The unspoken implication behind the moniker play to earn is that this is fun. You're earning money by playing. Play! It's a toy. You're making money by having fun with the fun toy. Without dropping the kind of money I don't have on it, or signing up with a Filipino sweatshop, it's actually hard to say from the outside. I've heard folks say that these games aren't particularly great, and I've also read some mildly positive reviews that say thanks to Yield Guild for the NFTs at the bottom. But it's undeniable that once there's a financial element, or you're trying to pay off your debts to your employer, the game can only become a grind. Think of literally anything you've done over and over and over again in a game, just to get a shiny bauble at the end of it. It wasn't fun, that's why we call that stuff grind, for crying out loud. At least once you have your bauble, you can stop and show off your bauble to your guildies. Now imagine you're playing the game in the most efficient min-maxed fashion all day, every day, because that's how you pay rent. Did you ever look at those WoW gold farmers killing the same mobs for 8 or more hours a day and think, that looks great, those guys have really got it made? No you didn't, because it looked like a tedious chore. And that's the nature of the wage relationship. As soon as you make a game your low-paid job, it's destined to be as fun as any other low-paid job. At least when you work in a supermarket, you can skive off in the back room for a bit and chat to your colleagues about what's on Netflix, and there's no risk of you failing to make rent this month when the value of Ethereum crashes. What really boils my piss in all of this is that none of it is new. We've already done all of this before, no matter what form of mediocre to shittiness it entailed, none of it required the blockchain to achieve. None of it required burning down the Amazon rainforest to achieve. And yes, I know proof of stake is a thing, but huge swathes of this still run on Ethereum, which is still proof of work at time of writing, and therefore involves killing the planet. You don't need blockchain to have unique and tradable video game items with real-world value. TF2 and CSGO had those years ago and didn't need the blockchain. You don't need the blockchain to make money grinding the most tedious bits of video games. People were selling gold in WoW back when I played it in 2006, and it wasn't new then. And the people doing the grinding were still being exploited in sweatshops. Play to earn is just the libertarian version of gold farming. RPGs like Mass Effect allowed you to have your character persist between games, and you didn't need an NFT to do it. And you don't need blockchain to have meaningful ownership of your video game character. I'm going to wheel out Maroka Thornbrush as an exhibit yet again, because I have not been able to play as her since 2018. She was taken away from me by nasty devs who didn't give me my character as an NFT. But what the hell would I do with her even if she was an NFT? The servers are still offline. But she still lives rent-free in my head, I know her story, I have screenshots and game footage of her allowing me to commission artists to immortalize her likeness. What the hell could an NFT possibly add to that? I could sell her, I guess, but who would want my character when they already have their own? No, she's mine, with or without blockchain. Oh, and one last thing. While I was writing this video, Atari announced they're fusing the last worst thing in gaming with the next worst thing in gaming, and are releasing loot box NFTs, which they're calling GFTs. I think they missed out a couple of letters. Because it's a grift. Get it? Anyway, yeah, fuck this fucking industry. Thank you as always to my non-fungible channel members for supporting what I do. I wouldn't fund you for the world. Thanks especially to Weirter and Tolkers for supporting my channel at the Buccaneer tier. If you enjoy my content, please consider becoming a member by hitting the join button below. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you next time.